BOMISpirit. So it's time for another episode of Astrotalk. I wanted to do one for Mars going into Cancer on September 4th, but then I realized I can't really do that unless I talk about Mars retrograde, which also includes Mars being in Leo, which includes all of the months from basically now to May of 2025. And I was like, all right, if I'm gonna do this, I wanna do it right. And so we are gonna do this in multiple parts because that covers a lot of time, but there's also some other interesting layers going on that will make this a lot more complicated as well. Don't worry about it being complicated. I'm here to break it down to make it easy to digest, so it's not complicated for you to digest. But considering that Mars going in retrograde also has a huge impact on 2025, like literally the first half of it, really the first third. Half is a little bit of an exaggeration. Definitely the first third. Also why I want to take it slow and do this as a series and in multiple parts. This will mostly be astrology based. I may or may not do cards or readings depending on what particular video I'm doing in the part of the series that I'm doing. This is really just to get your taste buds wet. I know that's not the phrase, but that's the phrase that wants to move through me right now. As far as just a very general overview of what to take away or expect with Mars retrograde. Okay? Okay. All right, that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So with this Mars retrograde phase, the pre-shadow starts October 4th, but Mars moves into Cancer September 4th. Okay, September 4th, Mars in Cancer. October 4th, pre-shadow starts. And then the retrograde actually won't start until December 6th. And then the retrograde ends February 23rd, and then the post-shadow ends May 2nd, just to kind of give you a bit of a broad timeline of things. Now, what's interesting about this Mars retrograde is that Mars will be aspecting multiple celestial bodies that will be dancing between Pisces and Aries. It's a dance because some are moving forward, some are moving backward. I'm speaking about Saturn and Neptune and North Node. Now, Saturn won't specifically be aspecting Mars while it's in Aries, but Saturn in 2025 will actually be conjunct Neptune in Aries, and I do think that that conjunction will play off of what we learned during Mars retrograde. So again, multiple parts going on here. When I really looked at all of the important aspects, there's still more I want to look at, which is why, again, I'm doing this in a series, but because I haven't taken into account the moon cycles and other things going on, like Venus retrograde happening at the very same time. And I think Mercury will be retrograde too in winter around February. Again, video for another part of the series, but let's come back, okay? When I really looked at all of this and tuned into it, the dance between Mars going from Leo to Cancer and back and forth, right, with this retrograde, it's a lot about the heart. But it's interesting how it came through. It was like a lot of lessons and clarity on how and if you operate from the heart and from a place of love and integrity and respect, not just for self, but also for others. Or are you doing it from a place of ego, fear, glory of self sort of deal? So that's the polarity we're working with. Now, when I say polarity, it's a spectrum, right? It's like some people may be way on the end of, I act out of ego, I act out of fear, I act out of glory of self, right? And then there's the other spectrum of acting out of a place of being able to function from the heart and unconditional love and being very honest with your intentions, and do you respect others as you go about fulfilling your intentions or acting from your intentions. So it's a really interesting little dance going on here. Anything else in the overview that I want to mention? That's the main thing. That's the main thing. Also with Mars, just as a rule of thumb, when Mars is retrograde, typically it's a little bit more difficult to take action. It's a little bit more difficult to get up and go and get things done, whether you're experiencing it as an internal struggle or external challenges. So just keep in mind it can manifest either way or both. But with this Mars retrograde, I feel like it's gonna feel like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Excuse me. That's how it feels to me when I tune into it. Like 3 steps, bang, 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 and then something happens or something internal starts to happen and you're like, oh shit, and you feel like you kind of regress. I also want to state any perceptions of regression may not be a true regression. Even right now, as they're speaking to me, they're starting to give me more messages and downloads about it. Remember, there's nothing truly linear in this life. Like, there are no natural lines in nature. Everything is a spiral, everything is a circle, if you will, including our experiences and even the way our emotions move. And so, even though you may feel like I took 3 steps and I regressed 2 steps, it might not be a true regression. It might just be that you're moving along the spiral and you're just very aware of it because of the certain energies that we have, especially with Pisces being the mix in this, and Cancer, very intuitive energies. And then we have the intensity of the fire of Aries and Leo also in the mix too. There's so much more I want to say about that, but again, I know this is a general video. So just be aware of that. And don't be too hard on yourself about that at this time, okay? That being said, let's talk a little bit more about what it means for Mars to be in Cancer and Leo and even this whole retrograde. I was going to say doohickey phase. It's one of those days, guys. It's one of those days. So, like I said, on September 4th, Mars moves into Cancer, right? Pre-shadow starts October 4th, but on November 11th, Mars will move into Leo, okay? Just to give you a couple dates ahead of time to see the trajectory of this. We're going to have Cancer to Leo, and then to Cancer, and then back to Leo again, accounting for the pre-shadow, retrograde, and post-shadow phases, all right? Now, Mars in Cancer is technically debilitated, technically speaking. All that means is it's hard for Mars to function at its best. It's just kind of a little on the weaker side when it's in Cancer. And that's because Mars is all about the get up and go and do and to be decisive and focused and cut through things and make things happen. Cancer is all about emotions. All about emotions. So when Mars is in Cancer, especially if you're going through like your own Mars return during this time, you're really going to feel this. It's really more about what emotions are driving you. It's more about that. And especially speaking to Cancer, loved ones, family, anything regarding your sanctuary, your safe space. Think 4th house, right? Safety safe, all of that stuff. That's what's driving a lot of us during that time, or at least is a huge influence or priority, or just something that's really in our awareness as something to consider. Okay, that means like standing up for people you love, protecting the people you love, being loyal to your tribe, loyal to your friends. But there may also be some lessons wrapped up in there about, are you loyal to yourself as well? Are you loyal to your safety space, your safety safe, your safe space? So as I'm speaking about these energies, anytime I speak about energies in astrology, just know that it's always a spectrum of expression and experience of these energies. All that means is that you could be at this end, you could be at that end, you could be anywhere in the middle, okay? I know I just said like nothing's linear, but you understand what I mean. Spectrum, the spiral of the spectrum. That just made my math brain go, whoop. Anyway, coming back. So with Mars in Cancer, some people may need to be learning how to take action from a place of fortifying their own sense of emotional safety and security. For some, that may translate to a physical home. Some that will translate to boundaries with relationships. Other people, it's going to be way more about who your fam is, who your tribe really is, and standing up for them, showing your loyalty, showing how much you are really in it, right? And dedicated. And vice versa. So that's an interesting spectrum, just talking about Cancer in and of itself. And with the retrograde portion of this, because Mars will retrograde through Leo and through Cancer, through both of them. So during the times when Mars is retrograding in Cancer, just looking at my notes, that's actually going to be from January 6th to February 23rd, the latter half of the retrograde phase. That's when Mars will be retrograding in Cancer. Mars will retrograde in Leo prior to that, December 6th to January 5th. So I want to make this clear. When the retrograde phase starts, that's December 6th, it will be in Leo and will move to Cancer on January 6th, okay, a month later. And then we'll go stationary direct February 23rd. Just want to be clear. But anyway, let's come back. So particularly when Mars is retrograding in Cancer, it's going to bring about probably some doubts, some insecurities, some challenges that's going to make you really reflect. on all of those things and how much you really act on or stand up for all of those things. Your own sense of boundaries, your personal sense of safety, your home and domestic life, and also your family and your tribe and who those people really are, and is there integrity there, right? Now, the Leo portion is where this also gets kind of interesting. Hold on a second, I need a little bit of water. The Leo portion is interesting here because anytime a planet moves from one sign to the next, it's really taking the energy it's been in and just gifting it to the next sign. So it just shifts a little bit. The neighbors of every sign are not that different from each other. They have something in common. Sorry. Oh shit, hold on, I'm sorry. And what Leo and Cancer have in common? People. Tribe. That's what Leo and Cancer typically have in common. There's more, and we could like really get down into it, because there's also playful energy that both Cancer and Leo kind of share with each other, where it's almost like mother-child kind of vibes. Video for another time. But when I tuned into this and I was looking at my notes, I could see it and I could feel it, where it goes from this focus of, oh my gosh, hold on. Where it goes from this focus of who's my family, who's my tribe, where's my home, what does my home feel like, do I stand up for that, do I prioritize that, how do I keep that safe, how do I keep me safe, all of that, and taking the social component of that and turning it a little bit more focused on not necessarily like the emotions that drive you there, but more your desire that drives you like that. Leo is about creative expression, which comes from desire, comes from passion, comes from this innate being of just who we are as people, right? And especially with it being they're both part of the retrograde phase, it's not like we're jumping from one extreme to another. It's not like that. It's just a gradient. They just said explain a gradient. It's just a slight shift into the next spectrum. That's all it is, right? So having that intensity of that focus of other people and like those like heart-to-heart connections, right? Including your sense of emotional safety, suddenly you become a little bit more self-focused. Suddenly you become very aware of, wait, am I getting my own desires fulfilled? Am I able to play? Am I able to actually just like enjoy this and have fun? Now, when I tuned into that polarity got interesting. That I think is going to coincide with an interesting polarity and spectrum of people that are kind of at this a little bit more shadowy end of Leo, where it's more about self-serving, to be honest with you. It's just what I was getting. Wanting to captivate people for the sake of personal satisfaction and personal fulfillment, like captivating an audience or getting people to follow you for a cause or a project or just to bear witness to you, right? That's very shadow Leo. And then to the other side of the spectrum of that, where it's like taking your loved ones or taking even your safe space and being able to share that with people, being able to bring people in together and just enjoy it on a whole other level beyond emotional, right? And that is beautiful and that is incredible. So in everything I said in the spectrum of Cancer in retrograde and not retrograde, and even Leo retrograde, not retrograde, you could experience anything in between that, right? And anything that you experience as far as, well, anything that I'm mentioning, like I said before, everything's a spectrum here of different experiences you could have when it comes to astrology, but that also comes down to free will. Comes down to what you're dealing with in that present moment in your life, where you're at in your life, what your beliefs are, right? And what your priorities are. So it's different for everybody. Now, something else I was feeling with this retrograde was like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. I don't know if I mentioned that in this video. This is like the 3rd time I'm trying to record this. But that's what I was feeling, where it's like Mars, even when it's retrograde, there's like this intensity, especially when it's in Leo, which it will start retrograding first in Leo, right? In December, most of December will be this kind of energy where it's like dun, 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 right? 1, 2, 3. And then suddenly 2 steps back. Suddenly like, oh, wait a minute. something happens, or you start to doubt, or just like, something gets kerfluffled and you may feel like you regress. It's not a true regression. Did I say this in this video? This is what happens when you try to record something multiple times. You don't remember when you said what in which video. So if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. We're just flowing with it. But if you do have that experience of regressing, I don't think it's a true regression, okay? It's a chance to just grow and learn. That's what retrograde phases are for. They're for reevaluation and growth. That's literally just the energy that they vibe in, right? So don't look at it as regression. And also, it's like they're reminding me of like the spiral. Again, don't know if I said this already or not, but nothing's truly linear in this life, right? So if you do take 3 steps forward and then you feel like you take 2 steps back, just know that you're probably just on the spiral, and that's okay. And maybe it is showing you something about yourself, or showing you something about your own patterns or your motivations, intentions. Motivations and intentions are huge with this retrograde. I would say major theme. Heart-centered, coming from love, right? Coming from even like unconditional love at that. Or is it from ego and wanting glory and fear? But also intentions. What are the true intentions and motivations, right? Because just because you are saying, I want this, that doesn't mean that's your motivation. That doesn't mean that's your intention just because you say, I want to do this. Well, what's driving that? There's something behind that that's driving you to want that, right? You understand what I'm saying? So getting to the roots of what really drives you, what really motivates you. But again, putting it in this context, if you will, of tribe and community and people, and how are you playing in those dynamics? Are you staying true to integrity in those dynamics, even true to self, right? And true to others? It's going to be very interesting retrograde phase. Now, there are 5 key aspects that will repeat throughout this whole retrograde phase that I think are important, and I want to talk about those right now. Okay? Oh, excuse me. Okay. So the first one, hold on. Just trying to juggle timestamps and everything else. Okay. The first one being Mars square Chiron. So while Mars in the pre-shadow and retrograde and post-shadow phase, it will square Chiron, which will be in Aries, 3 separate times. All that energy is going to do is you're going to get in that Mars energy. Even if it's retrograde, you're still going to feel that, and being driven again by your emotions, specifically your emotions around family, loved ones, security, safety, safe, sanctuary, home, all that stuff. And then Chiron's going to go, hold up, wait a minute. That's how I look at squares. I look at squares as there's one force and the other force is like, hold up, wait a second. So you're going to have this motivation in that Cancerian, emotional, heart-to-heart connection energy, right? And then Chiron's going to go, wait. Chiron's going to say, hold up. And it might bring up some insecurities and doubts, because Chiron and Aries, that is like literally the wounded ego identity, the wounded self, like how you assert yourself, how much you value yourself, self-worth, all that stuff, right? And so that feels just very emotional to me. I don't feel a lot of external situations happening. If anything, there may be some triggers that get you to like stop in your tracks, to get you to reevaluate some things. I don't feel a lot of confusion. I actually just feel a lot of emotion and just triggers happening there. And the dates for that, oh, I did write them down. Of course I did. So the 3 separate times this will happen: October 13th, February 3rd, 2025, and March 26th, 2025 is when this will be taking place. It's just part of the whole phase coinciding with these other aspects talk about. So just know that, okay, that is part of it. Now the second one, second one's a doozy. Yep. Mars sextile Uranus. That one could be kind of fun, honestly. So this will be with Mars in Cancer and retrograde in Cancer. This will not touch when Mars is in Leo, okay? But Mars sextile Uranus, while Uranus is also in Taurus. This is going to intensify changes as far as like voluntary and involuntary changes happening, but also sexual energy. A lot of sexual energy too with this retrograde. A lot a lot. I mean, Mars already has that innately, but then Uranus is part of this, Neptune's part of this, Aries is part of it, Leo is part of it. A lot of sexual energy going on around here. So if you enter into a relationship, just saying, around like September, October, oh, you in for a ride. You in for a roller coaster, and it could be really fun. Probably lots of ups and probably lots of twists and turns, but it'll be fun. Don't get scared. It's part of life. You might as well have something exciting going on, right? Anyway, so let's come back. So Mars sextile Uranus. So like I said, a lot of changes, whether they're voluntary or involuntary. A lot of sexual energy too. It will amplify the emotional component of Cancer. So while Mars in Cancer, we're already become driven by emotions, Uranus is going to amp that up. Uranus is going to make us a little agitated in that, and not in a bad way. It's just going to like really shake up the emotional component of things and really bring a lot of emotions to the surface. Also helping us to discern what our true motivations are and true intentions actually are, and making peace with that, but also acting on that too, right? So I do think that that's really good. Just make sure that because the emotions are heightened, that you are acting from a place of being heart-centered and acting out of your intuition versus ego and attachment, because even that's tied to emotions, right? Because we can get triggered and then that could get all amped up and that could just become an ego-driven situation versus acknowledging what you're feeling and what's coming up inside of you and being like, okay, I can navigate this. I see the way forward. You see what I'm saying? It's like not to be super impulsive with it. Impulsivity is a part of this one too. This retrograde phase, but that's what I have to say about Mars sextile Uranus. And the dates for that, October 24th, January 23rd, 2025, and April 4th. April 4th is going to be an interesting day. I remember I highlighted that on my calendar, and I did not bring the calendar out here, but I forgot what else is happening on that day. Technically a portal day with 4/4. But there's something else going on that day too. And I can't recall it in this moment. Maybe it's a quarter moon. There's something. And like I said, we're doing multiple parts, so it's going to come up again. But let's get to the third aspect here. And this is going to be Mars trine Neptune. Oh, there's a lot to say here. So Mars trine Neptune will happen 3 times. The first 2 times, Mars will be in Cancer and Neptune will be in Pisces, and that will be October 28th and January 12th. The third time, Mars will be in Leo and Neptune will be in Aries, and that's where things can actually get a little shadowy. We'll get into it. Typically, Mars trine Neptune is really cool. Intensified charm, romantic, sensual energy, fun, playful, kind of like those kinds of vibes, right? And also if anybody is into creative endeavors or spiritual arts, also really, really great for that too. Here's where it gets kind of weird. When Neptune moves into Aries, and I know that there's a lot of people they have already been saying a lot about Neptune and Aries. I feel like most of my opinions on astrology are unpopular or just not like the main as far as like what most people are saying. I haven't come across too much, but because I wanted to do research, right? But I noticed a lot of people were attributing Neptune and Aries as being this like super powerful placement of like exaltation in a way, or becoming exalted. But remember, there's a polarity to everything. That is there with Neptune and Aries, but Neptune's also illusion. Neptune is literally the fogginess of the unknown void. It's literally what it is. It literally represents illusion. And you put that in Aries, confident, adventurous, impulsive. What does that sound like to you? Just saying, just food for thought. Like when I tuned into it, again, I could see the spectrum of it. I can. When Neptune moves into Aries, wow, Neptune's going to move into Aries March 30th, but the trine between Mars and Leo and Neptune and Aries is April 19th. The conjunction that people keep talking about with Saturn and Neptune won't happen until July, but it's not going to be exact. It'll be close. It won't be exact. The exact conjunction won't happen until February 2026. But let's focus on this Neptune factor. When Neptune is in Aries, the way I was feeling it and just intuiting, I could feel the end of the spectrum of inflated sense of self, to be honest. I mean, that's also what Aries is. Aries is the self, Aries is the I, right? And also, Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. It's kind of like the child of the zodiac in a lot of ways. It is the Fool card, and that's something that was coming up a lot, like Fool's Errands was coming up a lot. Neptune in Aries has a potential to create an illusionary sense of self and capability, overconfidence even, which doesn't bode well, right? It's like, especially when it's in a trine with Mars in Leo, where Leo is very confident in and of itself, especially being in Mars, and it just creates this energy of, I'm gonna go and take action. I'm gonna go do it. I'm gonna do it now because I'm amazing. It's that kind of vibe because I know it all. And it's not a coincidence either that that's also coinciding with the same year that Saturn is moving into Aries. And for those who are going through their Saturn Aries return, that's kind of part of it too. Like I feel like I've spoken on this a lot, especially to anybody who's had a session with me. But when Saturn is in Aries, that kind of Saturn return, it's kind of like the kid in the classroom who thinks they know more than the teacher. That's kind of that vibe. So I do think there's going to be some humility that it's going to be born out of anything aspecting Neptune and Aries, and even just while Neptune's in Aries. But especially when Saturn joins up with it, again, first time will be July 2025, and the second time will be February 2026, and that one will be exact. Can it have the expression of the kind of opposite direction? Yes, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Saturn, when that joins the party, now we're speaking beyond Mars retrograde. Now we're speaking into 2025 energies, right? Saturn creates that pressure and discipline, getting you to face reality of your actions that you have taken, because that's also Aries, right? And getting you to see and maybe reflect and kind of question, did I do right by that person? Did I do right in that situation? Or did I do wrong in that situation? Did I act impulsively? Did I not consider this? Did I not consider that? Did I have my tunnel vision eyes on? And there's a bit of a karmic energy going on with that too. Probably a video for another time, because I feel like I can do a whole video on Saturn, Neptune, Aries energies for 2025. But anyway, let's come back to the subject at hand. So yes, that is one expression and experience of Neptune and Aries working off of that Mars Leo energy. However, I will say, because when that trine happens in Leo and Aries versus Cancer Pisces, it's going to be in the post shadow, which means it's going to be time when we're integrating everything that's gone on during the retrograde phase. So I do think it bodes a little bit better, because of that, to the other end of the spectrum, where it is this kind of experience of taking action on a whole new level, where you are taking into account yourself, your desires, and all of that, but also other people, intuition, all kinds of possibilities, and anything that you have learned from the retrograde phase. So it can be this like next level inspired planning, executing, expression of self, standing up for yourself, taking action in any kind of way, right? So that can be really good. Now, speaking to romantic relationships, I do think there could be a bit of a fun spiciness that comes out of this. I will say, from now until May, not ideal for flings. I will say that. Not ideal for flings, just based off of Mars alone, not accounting for other aspects. So just noting that. Just because there's so much learning going on, and there's so much about like personal freedom and boundaries and things like that. We haven't even got into Pluto energies yet. There's also a big competitive energy that's part of all of this Mars retrograde stuff, which ties in back into the main lesson of, do you take action from an unconditionally loving, heart-centered place, or is it from ego and for the further glory of self? And because there's so much sexual energy here, if a fling is started and one or both of you is more in the egocentric side, that's not going to bode well. And for those who maybe are both in the other side of the spectrum of being heart-centered and all of that, could still maybe turn out okay, could still maybe turn out cool, potentially. I would just say serious relationships probably will bode well, not well, but better than flings under these aspects, is what I have to say about that. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about Mars and Pluto. Mars and Pluto. Okay. So Mars opposing Pluto is also part of these excuse me, part of the retrograde experience here with Mars. Now, the interesting part about this is that the 3 occurrences of Mars opposing Pluto, very different things are going on. The first time, Mars will be in Cancer and Pluto will be in Capricorn. There's something that feels very flashbacky about that. Very flashbacky. And that's going to be on November 3rd, the same day that Mars will move into Leo. So first on that same day, we're going to experience the opposition between Mars in Cancer, Pluto, and Capricorn, and then literally Mars will shift into Leo, okay? Flash forward to January, Mars will be retrograding in Leo and will be opposing Pluto in Aquarius, which I do believe will be direct at that time. Yeah, no, it will. It will be direct at that time. And then flash forward to April when it's in its post-shadow phase, Mars will be in Leo and will be opposing Pluto in Aquarius. So before we even talk about the signs, when you have Mars opposing Pluto, that is amped up competitive energy. 100%. That's it. Words. Oh my God, words. Retrograde is over. Mercury retrograde is over, but like I'm still struggling with my words a bit. Anyway, Mars opposing Pluto will amp up any sort of competitive edge, any sort of feelings of wanting to compete or feeling like you're in competition. It's also going to fuel you any kind of ambitions that you have at this time. Now, the cool thing though about the opposition is that it actually can work out really well. If you are feeling like there's certain goals you want to invest in, there's certain things that you want to go for or focus on or make happen, but keep your eyes on your own lane. Because when Mars is opposing Pluto and there's competition about, and you look at your competition or you get sucked into any kind of like mind games, it's gonna be a huge fight. More of a fight than it needs to be, okay? If you have any conflict that comes up at this time with other people, just eyes on your own lane, okay? I highly encourage you, eyes on your own lane, eyes on your own lane. Remember, integrity is still a big part of this retrograde phase as well, okay? Eyes on your own paper, so to speak. Especially with like the Leo Aquarius component. I feel like that first one, there's something that feels very old about it. I keep wanting to say flashbacky. I keep wanting to say that about it with the Cancer Capricorn polarity. And there may be some really old stuff that comes up for you at that time, but I just feel like it's almost tied into other things, is what I feel with that opposition, the first one. But when we get Leo and Aquarius in the mix, that fixed energy, and then fire and air especially, tuning into it, I already feel this feeling of like, I am right. I already feel that. A little bit of like self-righteousness kind of going on there of I am right and I am right and I am right. Just stay true to your intentions. Make sure that you are aware of your intentions and you're not getting lost in the competition. You're not getting lost in the feeling of wanting to achieve, right? Or wanting to accomplish something or wanting to be known for something. Oh, my neck just cracked as I said that. Want to be known for something. It just feels like a very strong, like, I want to lead and I want to stand for something. I want to make a mark. Like, that's the feeling that I get with Mars and Leo opposing Pluto Aquarius. There's something else I wanted to mention there. Sexual energy. Thank you. Sexual energy is really amped up too when you get Mars and Pluto working together. And Mars is also going to be dealing with Uranus. Like I said, a lot of sexual energy going on. Even Mars Neptune, like I mentioned before, sexual romantic energy going on. So especially if you have a relationship at this time or you've entered into a relationship during this phase, enjoy the sensual tenderness, because Mars working Neptune that I mentioned before will add tenderness. Don't fall into competition. Don't. It's not going to be worth it. I promise you, it is not going to be worth it. That is old paradigm anyway. And I feel like this is actually just getting a kickstart into the next couple years of lessons of competition versus collaboration. I say that because of Saturn in Aries and Neptune in Aries. Yeah, the more I feel into it, that's what it feels like to me. And even with Pluto being in Aquarius, right? Because Pluto's just getting started in Aqua and we got 20 years of this energy. When Pluto gets started in a sign, I feel like people get very exacerbated in the shadow, or like what it is we're trying to transmute in that sign in Aquarius. And Aquarius is about community. Aquarius is about collaboration, and any kind of shadow of that would not facilitate that, right? Or anything that would impede that would literally be the opposite, which is competition. And so that on top of the Aries energy, which is already competitive, and we're shifting from North Node Aries to North Node Pisces, which is moving from a like almost a kind of like competitive, assertive, right? Kind of confident energy, learning what that is, and then almost like shifting into something softer where it is a little bit more about people. And then North Node will move into Aquarius. I feel like I'm getting into 2027 stuff. Anyway, I don't want to lose you guys. My point is, I feel like we are being ushered into some lessons right now that are going to last for a couple years on competition versus collaboration and the true cost of that. The cost of competition is community. That is the cost of competition. It's community. And I think we all know that deep down, but I think there's gonna be something about that that's gonna be really in our faces in the next couple of years for those who are needing to learn that. Because while this is a collective lesson, individually, everybody's in a different spot with that, right? So that being said, let's move on to the final aspect. So glad I'm doing this in parts. I was like legit today trying to get all information digested, and I'm like, no. No, ain't gonna be worth it. So this is gonna be about Mars trine the North Node. So remember this dance I keep talking about of like Aries and Pisces and like water and fire. So the dance that Mars is doing with the North Node is fascinating to me because it's almost backwards compared to the other aspects we talked about. With the North Node, Mars is actually going to start in Leo, and the North Node is going to start in Aries, and then they're both going to shift to water by the end of the retrograde phase as far as them working together. I'll say that again, as far as them working together, okay? On November 22nd, Mars will be in Leo, North Node will be in Aries. January 4th, Mars will be retrograding in Leo, trine North Node in Aries, and then April 11th, Mars will be back in Cancer and trine the North Node, which will now be in Pisces. The North Node moves into Pisces early January. Can't remember the date offhand. I want to say it's the 9th or the 11th of January, if memory serves. That's how I'm seeing it. That's how I'm seeing it in my head. But anyway, so this actually brings about eagerness and motivation for really pulling in what you want in your life and also being very clear on what you want in your life. Now, while the retrograde phase is happening, which is again from December 6th to February 23rd, this aspect peaking at January 4th, right in the middle before Mars moves into Cancer, right? How do I want to say this? When it goes retrograde, it might be a little bit harder to be more clear and more motivated. But again, this is encompassing many, many months, these aspects that I'm speaking to. And as we take steps forward, like I mentioned before, we may have take a couple steps back. The steps back, especially with these aspects, might actually show you certain challenges, blocks, or lessons that should be learned at this time to actually continue forward with the things you want to continue forward with, okay? Now, the blocks and challenges may even be karmic in and of themselves. And when I say karmic, I really just mean it is going to facilitate some growth, and it may feel like paying your dues, if you will, but I don't feel like it's going to be a big hindrance. I don't feel like it's going to be a big drag on anyone's energy. I don't feel like it's going to create these like monumental obstacles. Like I don't feel that at all. It feels very much like just the awareness of it, of, oh, I didn't consider that. Or shit, why did this happen? Why did I get stopped in my tracks? And it's like, oh, I see. I didn't account for this, or this is something I'm not acknowledging, or whatever, right? But moving from the Leo Aries to Cancer Pisces with Mars and North Node, it is moving from these lessons we've been learning with the North Node and Aries of how to stand up for yourself, how to speak up for yourself, how to take initiative, how to take action, how to believe in yourself, how to have confidence and self-esteem, right? Not be afraid of taking initiative, to North Node Pisces lessons. That I feel like that's also gonna be a whole video in and of itself, probably part of this series as well. But when we move into North Node Pisces, It will also coincide with a switch that we're experiencing with Saturn, because Saturn's going from Pisces to Aries, North Node from Aries to Pisces. So Saturn's actually been preparing us for the North Node Pisces. Oh, I just feel like I got hit with a lot of stuff. Experience. Okay. So speaking of Saturn Pisces for a second, that has been teaching us how to have faith, how to let go, how to forgive, how to heal, how to have compassion for ourselves, for others, how to be disciplined even with our own soul matters or emotional matters, coming through for many different people, coming in different ways for many different people, right? But not the easiest thing, right? Because Saturn and Pisces has been really hard on us to teach us how to just trust in the unknown and be very uncomfortable. It's like Eight of Cups and Tarot, right? It's walking away from all these emotional ties and connections and ideas and beliefs, even for some people, to just let it go and just venture off into the darkness to the, hear all those noises, to the Ten of Cups. That's what we have been learning right now. So when the North Node moves into Pisces in January, you can expect a lot more lessons than that. It's going to come down to what really matters for the contentment of the soul. That's what Saturn's been preparing for us for, and that's what the North Node is going to also do for us. And the North Node shifts every 18 months or so. So next batch of lessons are coming through in that vein. But with Mars backing that North Node energy in Cancer, the heart, emotional safety, security, tribe, family, heart-to-heart connections, I feel like it's going to bring a whole other level of, I almost want to say sobriety, like a little bit of like a humbling wake-up call of what actually does matter in life. And again, we've all been going through that already, and it's going to go to next level, which doesn't have to be bad. Like, I think a lot of people might find a lot of relief in this. Like, if you can be very accepting of limitations of physical reality, but also your own personal limitations, because while we are, you know, limitless beings on a soul level, we're still here in a physical body, right? We still are subject to the parameters of physical reality and even what we are physically capable of doing, which everybody has different limits and parameters of what that even means for them, right? If you can find peace and acceptance with that, and peace and acceptance with self and with where you are in the present, and find gratitude for what you do have, and just know, right, that everything is subject to change, and what you want doesn't have to be far away. What you want can be found in the present. You just have to find the acceptance and the way to make that happen, right? It might not be exactly how you want it in some like grandiose way, but it'll be what you need. We always get what we need. We don't always necessarily get what we want, but what we need is what actually gives us life and what sustains us. And that actually can bring a lot of joy in finding peace in that knowing, right? So needless to say, this dance of Pisces Aries, we're still balancing a lot of these lessons of how to be assertive, how to stand up, how to take action, how to be confident and believe in ourselves, while balancing how to also understand the limitations of what is at play and make peace with that, and make peace with expectations, and have more faith in ourselves, more faith in people, more faith in humanity, especially as we're also learning the difference and the importance of collaboration over competition. Not everyone's your enemy. I know that humans are all in a different space, and yes, there is this whole thing of you can't innately just trust anybody, which is the unfortunate part of our reality that we are evolving out of. Because we should be able to trust our neighbor. We should be able to trust our friends, our loved ones, our family. We should be able to have trust in these people. And we're going to start waking up to that realization of learning how to have trust in that with discernment, obviously. And I've said this before, but it's all an illusion without connection. That's also going to hit really hard in the collective too, as we move through this whole retrograde phase, but also moving into the North Node in Pisces in the 18 months of that lesson too. So as we conclude this video, I hope that this has served you well. I hope you feel intrigued about what's to come for this retrograde phase, and definitely look to see where you have Cancer 17 degrees to Leo 6 degrees, because that's where a lot of this is going to go down for you. And if that is in a very social house, like your fourth house, your third house, your seventh house, like things like that, I mean, buckle up, buttercup. Okay, that's what I have to say there. It can be a really, really beautiful like phase, honestly. There could be some really beautiful relationships and tribe and community born out of all of this. There can be a lot of healing that comes out of this for those who need it. I need to like reiterate that over and over, because some people like feel like just because I say it, it must apply to them. It doesn't apply to everybody. You know who you are, you know where you're at in your life and all that stuff, right? So again, discernment. But I'm ready. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready for this. Collaboration over competition, heart, unconditional love versus ego and fear. I know I said so many other things. But even how to believe in oneself while also understanding your own limitations and having that respect for others, and understanding the importance it is, how important it is to have trust in one another, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, right? It's an illusion without connection or community. So anyway, that's my spiel. If you are intrigued for part 2, I am as well, whenever I get around to that. All of the Astrotalk videos go on Patreon early for early access, and then they post to YouTube later on. And who knows how Astrotalk is going to evolve, because I feel like this could be a really fun series as we get started. And then every time when a video comes out, we're going to keep progressing together. Okay. Yeah, and I might do some live chats specifically for these Astrotalk videos on Patreon. I haven't decided yet. There's just so much in the air right now, I think, for everybody, myself included. But that is it. Again, hope this has supported you, and I will see you guys very soon. Don't forget to check out the website, socials, Patreon, all that stuff, and I'll see you guys later, okay? Take care.